Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. It has been a while. I am 6 weeks postpartum tomorrow. I still wanted to film my 39th week of pregnancy update just because you can't skip that week to get to the delivery, which is the next video. So this is my 39th week update for my pregnancy. Going into my 39th week, at the end of the 38th week, I was feeling pregnant. Like very large. It was getting harder to walk. I felt like uncomfortable, and I hadn't felt that way throughout my entire pregnancy just at that time. Which, I mean, is obvious. You're very pregnant at that point. And I didn't know how large I was until I looked at some video from the delivery. I was very large, just bump-wise. I gained 28 pounds my entire pregnancy, which was really good. So going into my 39th week appointment, that's how I was feeling. Nothing had changed at my 39th week appointment. It was 39 weeks and 2 days, and I was still 1 centimeter dilated. She said my cervix was still long and hard. That's her words. She basically just said, okay, I'll see you back next week. So I had some worries about if I didn't deliver and I was like going past 40 weeks. And those are my opinions, those were my worries, and that's just what it was. And the things I was worried about was like placenta abruption, which is very rare, but I was still worried about it, which would happen like later in pregnancy. I was worried that the placenta would stop working, like it just runs out of nutrition for the baby. I was worried that the baby was going to poop in the sac, which happens like as the baby matures. So going into the 40th week, and she had said, you know, we're going to induce at 41 weeks, I was worried about waiting till 41 weeks if I hadn't gone into labor naturally. I was also a little concerned because at my 37th week ultrasound, my baby was 7 pounds. If she continued the growth pattern that she had, then at 41 weeks she was going to be 9 pounds, according to the chart. So I had asked if there was any way I could be induced before 41 weeks. Now, the doctor hadn't brought this up, was never concerned about my weight whatsoever, but she had said, yes, that I could elect for an induction because my BMI is over 30. It is what it is. But she did say that, and she said, oh, you can be induced today if you want to. That was 39 weeks and 2 days. And I was like, no, I'm at least going to wait till 40 weeks to be induced, because I would feel bad if like I elect to have an induction before like full term, technically. Like you're full term at 37 weeks, but finishing out the 40 weeks is what I'm talking about. So my husband and I talked about it at that appointment, and we chose to be induced at 40 weeks if I hadn't gone into labor naturally by that point. So the induction was scheduled for September 9th, which was my due date, 9/9/19. And we were just going to see if our little girl wanted to come before then, and we would do it naturally. But if not, then we wanted to be induced on that day. Now, when you get scheduled for the induction, they give you a paper, like you sign a waiver. It goes over like all of the risks that you're agreeing to for an induction. And there are a lot of them, like you're at a greater chance of having a C-section because if your body wasn't ready, like there's a chance the induction won't work. To be able to have an induction, you get a Bishop score, which is like what's going on with your cervix. And my doctor did say that I scored a 6, which means the induction would likely be successful. If you get over a 9, then that means like you're likely to be natural. You're likely to just have your baby without an induction. I was at a 6 at that point based on like how dilated I was and how I faced, that sort of thing. So I went home from that appointment. Everything was totally normal. But that day I had noticed that it like started hurting when I was breathing, like when I would inhale. It was pretty painful. like that I would stop taking a breath because I just couldn't handle it anymore. At one point I was in tears, whatever. So I have this gene for thrombosis. So it is called a heterozygous gene for thrombophilia. Thrombosis is like a deep vein blood clot. So when I had the symptoms that it was hurting to breathe, I'm very aware of a pulmonary embolism. I know the symptoms. They have went over everything like that with me because of the risks. So when you're pregnant, you're at a 5 times greater risk than anybody else to have a blood clot during pregnancy. And then your risk factors go up, which there's different risk factors like based on your age, your weight, your activity level, things like that. Then you're greater to have a blood clot during pregnancy. With the gene that I have being heterozygous, I was 10 times more likely to have a blood clot than the average person. So they had prepared me way in early pregnancy when I got my genetic testing done that what symptoms of a blood clot looks like. So I had called the nurse's line, told them what was going on. They recommended that I went to triage right away, which I did. And I was admitted to labor and delivery for 9 hours. I didn't notice, but like one of my legs was more swollen than the other one, and when they did my vitals, my oxygen was low. I was only at 91%. You're supposed to be above 94% for oxygen. So I wasn't breathing like how I should. I wasn't getting enough oxygen for a human body to sustain itself. So the doctor looked at me and she said, this is very likely that you have a pulmonary embolism. There's multiple tests that we have to do, and there's side effects of those tests, or not side effects, but risks to the baby with those tests. I am not going to go into those risks because I had already come to terms with that. I didn't want to have the tests done. My husband and I had talked about it, and if I did have a pulmonary embolism, and at that time we didn't know, then I could have a stroke, I could have a heart attack, the clot could go to the baby through the placenta. There was a lot of things that were going on with the risks that were greater than how it would affect the baby. Me, today, I know that my child is perfect and I love her, so I'm not going to talk about what could have happened from those tests. The tests that I had to get done, I had a chest x-ray, I had CT scans, and I had a nuclear, I don't forget what it's called, but it was in nuclear medicine department. So that's in the basement of a hospital. And somebody in a biohazard suit got like a missile out of somewhere and put it in a chamber, and I had to breathe it through a gas mask. And then they had to scan my chest with gamma rays. So that wasn't very comforting that a woman didn't want to touch it, but I had to breathe it in. So, but it is what it is. After all that testing, everything came back negative, that I didn't have a pulmonary embolism, and they let me be discharged 2 hours of stable oxygen above 94%. And so I went home. But that's, contributed to just kind of being exhausted and these videos not being made on time. So after that, I was really just focused on packing my bag for the hospital to be delivered, because at that point they were going to have an emergency C-section if I did have a PE, and I kept thinking of all the things I didn't have in my hospital bag that was packed from 27 weeks just wasn't ready apparently. So I went home and I did that and just kind of enjoyed, you know, the last days of pregnancy. The weekend going into my induction, yes, I did not deliver naturally. I had to be induced. And going into that, I just kind of had thoughts like, are we making the best decision, you know, with the risk involved for an induction? You know, would she come on day 40 weeks in 1 day, 40 weeks in 2 days? We just couldn't know. And so there was a lot of just kind of like talking through that. At the end of the day, we can't know. We can't know if one of the things that we were worried about would happen if we didn't go through with it, or if they would, and we couldn't know, like, you know, what was the safest way. We just went with our gut and chose what we wanted to do. So the day before my induction, 39 weeks and 6 days, I was emotional and nervous and I couldn't sleep. And it was emotional because it was the last day of pregnancy. Like, I wasn't going to feel her inside anymore, and I didn't know what that was going to be like. And, you know, you never know what kind of parent you're going to be, you know, and, like, can know for sure. And you just don't know what's going to happen. Anything can happen during delivery, and that's scary as hell, truly. By the end of week 39, I was so ready, though, because it was uncomfortable to walk. Like, it was uncomfortable to lay down. There was a lot of body down there. And so we just had to feel good with our decision, and it was time to meet our child, and she's the best. And my next video will be my birth story, and I'm so excited to be able to film it and share it. And a lot went on, and it was badass, but it was hard. So stay tuned for that. So hit subscribe so you know. And we will chat about it then.